Hi all, welcome to today's Safe Grow Lawn Care event. And I'm Nima Upadhyay with City of Takoma Park Public Works. I'm a special projects coordinator and I work to manage the Safe Grow program for the city. So this is the agenda item for today's event. Please sign in, there's a signing sheet, so please put your name, email address, and home address in the signing sheet. And I'll give a short presentation about Safe Grow. Then our city gardener, Mike Welch, will talk about his experience in managing city garden. And today's main event is by Zack Kline. He is a lawn care practitioner who has been practicing organic lawn care and is local, and we are glad to have him today. And he will be doing the main presentation, and at the end we'll do a question and answer session. As you all know, the Safe Grow law was passed by the City Council on July of 2013, and the law restricts the use of cosmetic lawn care pesticide in both private and public property throughout Takoma Park. So this is just a basic about the law. So what does the list of restricted pesticide includes? It includes three of the items. The first one is carcinogenic or likely to be carcinogenic to human by US EPA. The second one is Class 9 pesticide by Canadian Ministry of Environment. And the third one is Class 1 endocrine disruptors. So all of the pesticides that are included in this list is in the Takoma Park restricted list of pesticide. And what the city does is, like every year, by the end of February, we go and look at this list and see if there is any change and update our list every year. So for this year, our update was done on end of February, so we already update our list. We also maintain a list of minimum risk pesticide, which is like this minimum risk pesticide are allowed for cosmetic lawn care in Takoma Park. And it includes all the items that is designated by US EPA as minimum risk pesticide. And all this information, like restricted pesticide list and minimum risk pesticide, are included in our city website under Safe Grow. You can find all this information out there. So just to let you know when the law went into effect. For commercial pesticide applicator, the law went in effect in 2014. If you see any commercial applicator applying, let us know. Call Public Works or call us, and we will send a notice out and telling them that they should not apply. Similar to property owner and tenant, the law went into effect on 2015, last year. So if you see any violation, let us know. So that's just a timeline telling you when the law went into effect. And all the information about the law is on city's Safe Grow page. And events like this, we advertise the event on our web page, and any new information about the law is on web page. So this is the link for the web page, just putting it out there. Go ahead.
Companies that do like the residential spraying for mosquitoes know that Takoma Park has this law in effect?
The law doesn't apply for mosquitoes. They are exempt. Yeah, so it's just for cosmetic lawn care. That means if you are trying to apply pesticide for having an aesthetic appeal for your lawn care, not for mosquitoes or stuff like that. And today's event, the reason for today's event is last year we did an event like this. It was for commercial pesticide applicator. But this year is for the residents of Takoma Park and homeowners. So all the homeowners attending this event, please sign in. You will get a free soil test. So please include your home address, email address, and phone number. And we will work with we will coordinate with you guys. We'll call you, email you to schedule a free soil test. So the signing sheet is back in the back of the room, so please sign in. The next thing we are doing this year is giving away free lawn care consultation to 10 homeowners in the city of Takoma Park. We launched this program in December of this year. We have around like 10 applicants, and today is the last chance for to sign up for this program. It's what we'll do is like we'll review the application and choose the homeowner who are having a problem with their lawn and give them free lawn care consultation. A.I.R, folks from A.I.R will be working with you on 1:1 to develop a program for that. So please sign in. And so that the lawn care application is on the back of the room. So you please fill in the application and you can leave it out there. We'll collect it, and the result for the application will be we'll send you an email on end of this week. That's on Friday. So the application is on the end of the room too. Please, if you haven't already signed up, fill the application, please do fill the application. And this is like the agenda item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the presentation to Mike Welch, our city gardener. He will be talking to you about the experience in managing city garden. And if you have questions, we will take the question at the end of the whole presentation. So please write down the question and so that you can ask it at the end of the whole event. Okay, Mike.
Hi. When I first came to the city a few years ago, they were spraying in gardens to remove weeds. I didn't necessarily go along with the program because I didn't think that pets and kids who entered our parks and our gardens would understand even if we put it when the signs were put up. So I looked for alternative means. And after discussing it with my upper management, we came up with utilizing some principles of IPM, Integrated Pest Management. We monitor today. We take appropriate action when necessary. We use mostly the manual approach. We try to remove most of the invasives through manual, even some of the larger pests such as honeysuckle bush. We will cut it down. We will cover the base of it with heavy PVC, and we just let the root rot out from there. We use, in some cases, we'll use just plain ordinary dish detergent to kill some bugs and or pests. For weeds in gardens, we use horticultural vinegar. We also use on sidewalks propane torch to kill weeds. We find it to be just as effective as any means that you would use, many people who are utilizing a Roundup. For fertilizers, we use leaf and food compost. Particularly, we set aside some of our own leaf mulch, and we let it sit for about a period of a year or so, and we use that as a planting medium when we plant plants for moisture retention. In my own yard, I haven't used pesticides or herbicides for 30 years, and today I have frogs, and occasionally I will find the salamander underneath a rock. So it does work. You bring back some of your things that we really like about gardening, creatures along with our plants. Thanks. Oh, Zack Kline now will talk about the lawn care management.
All right, so before I start my presentation, I'm going to hand out these pamphlets. If you guys just mind taking a look at them and passing them. These are actually soil tests, so when you get your soil test, this is what you're going to receive. I'm going to go, thank you. Yeah, if you want to pass one there and one there. So as I go through my presentation, I'll actually kind of talk a little bit about the items that are in there. So it's not going to all make sense right away, but just so visually you see what you're going to get as a soil test, that is what it's going to look like. But there's a lot of things on there that I have to kind of walk through, and I'll do that right here in the presentation. Okay, so once again, my name is Zack Kline. I'm the founder and CEO of A.I.R, formerly A.I.R Lawn Care, if anyone was familiar with our company before that. I'm here to talk to you about switching to natural organic lawn care methods, which we prefer to call no lawn care methods. And the goal really is to take you from the left side of this picture, where you see the gentleman with the yellow pesticide sticker on his lawn, to the right side. And in the right side, you'll notice a lot of differences. One, there's kids and pets playing. There's actual wildlife that's thriving. You'll notice the trees are actually healthy compared to the lawn on the property on the left. And even more importantly, which is the big thing with a natural organic lawn care program, is the soil. And in a natural organic lawn care program, you're taking care of the soil, which will then take care of your lawn. And typically what we've been doing since back in the 50s is actually just treating the plant itself and injecting all these chemicals, which actually depletes your soil and keeps you in this vicious cycle that keeps making you pay a low amount but over and over and over again. So my background, the reason I got into this business, I actually started with a Code Red Day here in Darnestown, Maryland. And I was working for a small landscaping outfit. I was a crew member, and my task was to go around and trim these 2.5-acre properties. And this contractor, like most contractors, would just have us work on Code Red days. So it was about 100 degrees, 100% humidity. It was terrible. And I had this gasoline string trimmer that I had to operate, and it's just spewing fumes and noise pollution constantly. And just the one day between that and the amount of gasoline we were using kind of got me fed up and thought, well, there's got to be a better way to do this, because as an operator, I don't want to operate this anymore. And there wasn't. So I set out, and this back in 2011, didn't have any service providers out there, so I set out as a maintenance business that uses battery-powered equipment, and that's what we got into. Over time, customers began asking, well, can you do other services? Can you do lawn care? Can you do sustainable design? So we started looking into sustainable lawn care, and at the time, a gentleman named Paul Tukey, who is the Chief Sustainability Officer at Glenstone Museum in Potomac. He's also the author of the Natural Organic Lawn Care Manual. Was in the area, and I was able to reach out to him, and over time, he became a mentor, and now he's actually one of our board members for A.I.R. So from there, the company's grown. I myself am an accredited organic land care professional. That's through a group called NOFA, the Northeast Organic Farmers Association. I'm a landscape industry certified manager through the National Association of Landscape Professionals, and I'm also a licensed fertilizer applicator and a licensed pesticide applicator. So I've gone through a lot of training, both with the conventional methods as well as with the organic methods, and there's definitely, I can tell you, a lot better results with the natural organic. Now, what exactly is no lawn care? I'm going to talk about a bunch of things in terms of the differences between conventional and no lawn care, but really it's safe, it's eco-friendly, it is aesthetically pleasing, and there is cost savings. Now, the picture you see right there is from one of the commercial properties we maintain. As you can see, it's a pretty, the contrast may not be that great, but if you actually look at the image, which we have on our website, it's very crystal clear. There's probably less than 5% weeds in that lawn. It's a very healthy green, and kids and pets are actually in the background playing on it without having to worry about any exposure to the chemicals. Now, to get that, it does require a different approach. It does require different expectations, different products, and different techniques. And so I'm going to go through each of those differences in the following slides to give you a better understanding of how we approach your lawn and take care of it so we can get it to look like something like that. Now, the first thing is the approach. As I mentioned, with a natural organic lawn care program, you're focusing on the soil, not the plant. And the soil is a living organism. We may have grown up calling it dirt and just thinking it's something you just throw and sling around, but there's billions of organisms in that soil that are living and that have the same requirements that we need in terms of food, water, and oxygen or air to breathe. And to kind of measure that and take a look at and get a basic understanding, so we do a soil test, which hopefully as you look at the sheet as it goes around, that tells us a little bit about the chemistry of your soil. It tells us your pH level, it tells us the nutrient levels, also tells us your cation exchange capacity, which is a measurement of fertility in your soil. And usually with lawns, you want to have about between a 6 and 7 pH level. Nutrient levels can fluctuate between your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and then you have your micro in terms of calcium and magnesium and some of the other smaller ones. The other thing is the structure and texture analysis. That can be done through a lab as well. or it can be simply done by just analyzing it. This area is notorious for a lot of clay, but it's pretty easy to do a ribbon test where you just take a mound of soil and kind of roll it up in your thumb as a ball and then see as it wiggles out. You can actually figure out the composition just by eye. And then with that structure test, and actually in the soil test, what you'll get is the level of organic matter. And that's very important because you want to have about 5 to 8% organic matter present in your soil to have a successful program. And then finally is the biology. So we're actually looking at the amount of bacteria and fungi in your lawn. And this is done through a test called a bioassay. It's not something I recommend for homeowners because it's very costly. It's about $250, $300 to do the test. So unless you're doing new construction on a property, or you really just want to go that in depth with your metrics, it's not something we recommend for a residential level or even commercial properties, if we have anyone from there for that. So this is what soil should look like underneath a microscope. You have a bunch of nematodes and other organisms in there. That's what you want to see. A lot of times if you were to take soil from a conventionally treated lawn, it's going to be a lot more sterile and you're not going to see a lot of these organisms present. So this is what you would actually see and what we'd like to see when we're looking at the soil underneath a microscope. And this is kind of a breakdown of what, I guess a very simple way of looking at it. It's called the soil food web. It's actually developed by Dr. Elaine Ingham out west, one of my mentors as well as Paul Tukey's mentors. And the way to kind of think about this is like the circle of life, but on the soil scale. And with this, if you think about a conventional program, let's just say you have a certain fungus that's present in your yard. So we'll just start with the fungi. You spray, your contractor or yourself, you go to Home Depot, you buy some type of fungicide, you spray it. Well, you just eliminate that fungicide that actually was keeping a certain insect population in check. Well, now that insect population just goes rampant and you have an insect problem. So now you buy an insecticide or you have your contractor put an insecticide down. So you eliminate that insecticide. But what you're essentially doing is you're just basically pushing it down the chain in this vicious cycle that continues into your soil's depleted, and you're either going to have to resod, reseed, or you're going to have to do some extensive lawn renovation work. As opposed to if you put more work into it at the beginning, you can actually make your soil sustainable and require less input over time. Kind of think of it as with life insurance, you have term versus annuity. One's going to pay off and have greater benefits over time versus the other. So as I mentioned, you have different expectations. So with this being a law that's passed in Takoma Park and that is also passed in Montgomery County and going into effect in a couple years, there's two things we always say as expectations. One, you need to be comfortable having clover in your turf. Yes, it can be eliminated and also mitigated with microclover seed mixes, but clover actually used to be a part of seed mix prior to World War II. It was actually not labeled a weed, and then when chemical companies had figured out that that was offering free nitrogen because it takes the nitrogen from the atmosphere and fixates it into your soil, they saw an opportunity to then sell more fertilizer, so that was immediately taken out of seed mix and then labeled as a weed. So a lot of people, if you recognize them, you'll see them in the summer with the white little bulbs. Bees love them. Four-leaf clovers, that's what they look like. You have to be comfortable having a little bit of that in your turf. We can, again, with a natural organic program, you can make it not be a nuisance in terms of visual aesthetics, especially when you have strong, dense turf, but it will be there. And then the final thing, expectation, is realizing that it is not an overnight success. You can go to Home Depot, buy synthetic chemicals, put them out at 6 o'clock at night, wake up the next morning, and you'll have a super green lawn. You're not going to get that natural with organic. There's a thing called the transition period, and depending, which I'll get to the next thing, which I'll go ahead and go there now. So there's three things that are going to make it successful for you to actually make that transition if you want to go quicker. It's your expectations, it's your budget, and what's currently existing in your soil. So if you have high expectations, you should have a high budget, especially if you want to make that transition period go quicker. Typically, a transition period from a chemical program to a natural organic program is 2 to 3 years. It's just about how much you put into it the first couple years. The more you put into it in terms of certain products and certain techniques, the faster you're going to speed up and get those results to, I would say, the natural organic green versus the chemical green. So the products that are different. We do use natural organic fertilizers, but we also have a whole array of other products that are used. The first one is Biochar. There's Compost Tea. We have fungus control products, grass clippings, Gypsum, insect control products, lime, natural organic fertilizers. You have A.I.R listed products, Section 25B products, and weed control products. So I'm just going to go through each of those real quick. If you have any questions, make sure you just jot them down so I can get them at the end. But biochar. So this is something that actually a lot of tree companies, I know Bartlett's starting to push it a lot, and they've been releasing information on it. It's actually slowly working its way into the turf industry. Biochar is basically charcoal that's produced from plant matter, and it's stored in the soil for many years. It actually doesn't go away, I think, for 10 to 20 years. But the benefits of it include increased water holding capacity, as well as increased fertility for your soil. It is not unaesthetically pleasing, so if you do an application with biochar, it's not going to be where you're seeing all this black in your turf, because it's literally little tiny specks. And with those little tiny specks, you get all these benefits that I'm discussing. Compost. So compost adds that organic matter we were talking about. You can have it's organic matter that's been decomposed. You get it through slowly leaving your grass clippings, mulching up your leaves in the fall. You can actually purchase compost. It increases the organic matter in the soil. Now, there's a thing, it is fertilizer, so there's this law in Maryland that came about a couple years ago. It's the Maryland Fertilizer Law. And according to that law, you cannot apply any natural organic products in one application. They can't have any more than 0.25 pounds of phosphorus per application and no more than 0.5 pounds of phosphorus annually. So what does that mean for you all as homeowners? Well, leaf grow, which is a very popular product that's made through the leaves that are collected, legally and technically cannot be applied on your lawn at the rate that it should be. And the way that we've been able to work around that is there's actually different types of compost: leaf compost, mushroom compost, worm compost. Not all compost is created equal, so you have to look at the test results in terms of the nutrient analysis of the compost you're using to ensure that you'd be in compliance with the law. Because our company's licensed and I'm a licensed professional, they would be looking at me more heavily, and they being the Maryland Department of Agriculture. With homeowners, yes, it is the law, but it's similar to the smoking ban and other things. If you do put it out, just realize that, again, you're not following the law as is. And just for information for everybody, I know down in Annapolis they're actually looking to change the law because of this, because compost actually does have a lot of benefits. It's just whoever had drafted the law did not realize that it actually interferes with the application rate at which you're supposed to put it. So just from compost, remember, not all of it's created equal. Know the source of it and the application and use that you're using it for. Compost tea is basically liquid compost. If you imagine making tea, you're taking compost, suspending it in a nylon bag. You can do this on your own by just going to Home Depot and buying a 5-gallon bucket, putting in water that's untreated, and also taking a compost, going to a fish aquarium, buying a little air generator, putting that in, and then you basically have the bag agitate for about 24 to 30 hours. You can add other ingredients to kind of make it have a fertilizer effect. But basically what you're doing is you're extracting the organisms that are in the compost and you're shooting them directly into the lawn. With compost tea, it's just those organisms are slowly breaking down. Compost tea does not increase your organic matter, so it's not going to have the same effect as compost, but it does increase those beneficial organisms that help with that soil food web process of photosynthesis and a lot of other important things that make your lawn be the way they should be. There's two different methods. There's brewing and extraction. For residential purposes, I would primarily do brewing. For contractors, it's a little different because extraction, we can actually store the compost and then use it at different times, which helps us logistically. But if you want to do this on your own, I recommend doing the brewing. And again, you can add other ingredients to it, such as fish emulsion, molasses. There's certain recipes we have that if anyone at the end would like to have some, just feel free to reach out and I can share that with you. There are fungus control products, natural controls, just involve dealing with watering properly, mowing properly, fertilizing properly. Typically, you'll have over-fertilization and over-watering, which creates a great environment for diseases to occur. So that's one way of doing it, just naturally changing those. There's the cultural controls. Yucca is a great supplement for if you have dog spots. So a lot of female dogs, if you actually go out and buy a Yucca supplement, will help reduce the dog spots that you have present in your, and that's because the yucca combines in their stomach with, I believe it's nitrogen, and makes it so that way you don't have the spots from it. And then you can write these two products down. Actinovate and Xerotol are great for diseases such as brown patch, which is very prevalent in this area. However, you do need to rotate these products because if you continue to use one product such as Actinovate consistently, the fungus will actually adapt to it and develop an immunity. So by constantly rotating that, you're keeping the fungus under control without losing the control yourself. Grass clippings. So these are the best thing about these, and I know I have at the end, but they're free. When you cut your grass, a lot of people I know in Montgomery County has been pushing it. Grass cycling, 300 pounds per 1,000 square feet gives you about a ratio of 4 to 0.5 fertilizer ratio for your lawn, and that's free fertilizer. And a lot of other professionals recommend if you do that in grass cycle, you only really need to do one fertilizer application in the season because that provides all the nitrogen that you need. But again, if you have certain expectations in terms of how you'd like your lawn to look, you can do other fertilizer applications. Gypsum is something that's big out west. It's mainly used to improve sodic soils, but the reason we use it a lot is to improve the calcium to magnesium ratio. So that impacts certain types of weeds that are present as well as the compaction of your soil. You want to have a 7-to-1 ratio, so whoever has the soil test sheets, it's a metric at the bottom right, Ca to Mg. We usually want 7-to-1. It'll be in the green if it has that. And that's how we get that by actually putting gypsum down as opposed to lime. Insect control products, you have boiling water, insecticidal soaps, you have rosemary oil, dish detergent, beneficial nematodes, milky spore for Japanese beetle grubs, and then using dethatching to prevent the insects from actually being there. Leaves, just like grass clippings, they provide great nutrient value. There is some herbicidal activity that they help prevent. It's free, and then it also helps reduce the amount of waste we have in our landfills. And also can reduce costs. One of the things we actually push people to do instead of leaf removal is leaf mulching. And I'll get to that in the end as a different technique. But basically with that, you would have your landscaper or yourself. You put the leaves in lines and rows, and you just go over them back and forth with your mowers. The goal being that you get them to be no bigger than 1 inch in diameter. Now, if you do have a lot of leaves and a lot of trees, then actually it's not beneficial to leave them there. So what you would do is you'd shred up as much as you can and then actually put them in your mulch beds as a free mulch source for your plantings. Again, I know sometimes aesthetics go into play, so you can go with that accordingly. But by doing this, you're going to save so much money because as a contractor, I can tell you leaf removal is expensive because if you're having us take your leaves, remove them off site, and then drive them somewhere, there's the equipment that's used for that, there's the time to take it to the landfill, and it's just much easier if we do it on site, and you'll see a great reduction in cost as well as a big improvement in your turf, especially if you're switching to natural organic lawn care because it's a free source.
How much when you rake your leaves, mow up your leaves, and most people are using the
Mulching mowers?
blades.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you leave on a green lawn?
Like I said, the actual clipping should be no much bigger than 1 inch in diameter. So if you'll see a picture, I have a picture up there that will show lawn that was cut with the mower, like where the leaves are and then where it wasn't, and that's ideally what you want to have. It's just visually, because I mean, if you have too much clumping, then you're going to have a bunch of patches in your lawn. Yeah. Lime, again, increases the pH of the soil. There's calcitic versus dolomitic. You want to use calcitic. Again, that's because of the amount of magnesium that's present in it. Again, we want that calcium to magnesium ratio to be 7-to-1. So dolomitic usually has a higher amount of magnesium present in it, so that would not help you with that ratio. And then powder versus pelletized. Powdered, you'd have to wear a mask. Pelletized actually gets absorbed quicker and is much safer, so you don't have to worry about inhaling the lime. Natural organic fertilizers. So there's a bunch on the market derived from a bunch of natural products. For this slide, just talking about the pros and cons. Pros, it provides beneficial nutrients. You've got improved root growth. It enriches the soil, and they're also biodegradable. The cons, as I mentioned with natural organic lawn care, is it is expensive initially up front, and that the lawn green up will actually take a little longer. It's not instantaneous, but it does occur over time. OMRI listed products. OMRI is the Organic Materials Research Institute. It's a nonprofit. They determine if it follows or if it's organic under the USDA National Organic Program, so it's for farming. But they have a lot of products that are OMRI listed for lawn care. I'm going to mention some of those in terms of weed control products. Usually, if you're looking for natural organic products to use, look for ones with this label on it. There's brands such as Safer and a couple other products. Again, if you have any product-specific questions, feel free to email me or give me your email, make a note or whatever, and I can actually shoot you that information. Section 25B, as you discussed in your law, they're exempt from FIFRA. They don't require EPA labeling, and there's about 44 active ingredients. Chickweed, chickweed is probably low calcium, so that's, again, your calcium to magnesium ratio. Chickweed is actually a very prevalent weed. We've noticed a lot of our properties over the years have had a lot of chickweed in them. The great thing about chickweed is it does bloom in the spring, but as soon as the temperatures go up, it disappears. So we'll get calls all the time saying, oh my gosh, there's this weed, it's chickweed, and within about a month of those calls, it's gone. So again, some of that's just kind of, you know, bearing and changing the expectations. Creeping Charlie, usually you have a low amount of nitrogen or potassium in your soil. And then Violet, as well as Creeping Charlie, it's usually, again, the calcium to magnesium ratio. So again, by putting gypsum down, you can increase that calcium to magnesium ratio and get rid of these weeds naturally, because then the turf can grow stronger and denser and crowd out these weeds. Now with the turf, we actually do something different as well, and I recommend it for you all. You can use battery-powered mowers now. They're actually, with battery technology, getting better and better each day. You can easily go to Home Depot. This is an Ego mower that they sell there. Commercial contractors now have the option of buying battery-powered equipment. A, you can store it inside. B, it's quiet, so your neighbors will be happy with that. And C, you don't have to breathe in those emissions and hear the noise. But using battery-powered equipment, we recommend cutting about 3.5 to 4 inches high. And the reason being that when you cut high, you're encouraging deeper root growth, it results in less cuts, and you're crowding out the weeds. And we've made recommendations to different properties that we've worked with, homeowners and commercial, where at first they were hesitant to do that, but then by doing it, again, they cut their frequency down, which typically in this area, the frequency has been anywhere from 24 to 26 cuts in a season. And sometimes you'll see contractors out there cutting in the summer when you really shouldn't be cutting. You should leave it growing high so that way it's shading it and there's not an impact on the actual root growth. Not keeping your blades sharp actually will make your lawn susceptible to disease and insects. So always making sure your blades are checked. If you're a homeowner cutting your lawn, you probably don't have to check as much as your contractor does, but if you do have a contractor, make sure that they are checking their blades probably weekly due to the frequency of cutting, because not having a sharp blade will actually impact your lawn quality as well. And then the only time we cut short, we had cut at 2 inches, and I recommend it for you all, is at the beginning of the season with the first cut, and then the last cut of the season. And also not only cut short, but make sure you bag it. And the reason why we do it at the beginning is to prevent any type of winter disease that may have developed on the lawn, and then take that off so you don't spread it. And then same thing in the fall is to prevent anything like that happening, because if you leave your grass really high and then you have a bunch of snow, you can have mice that will come in and just destroy your lawn. So by making sure you keep it cut and take the clippings off of it, both the first and last cut of the year, you can help prevent this from occurring. Now watering. Watering, early morning is the best time to water. You'll get the most bang for your buck. If you water too late in midday, you're going to deal with the sun evaporating a lot of your water, so you're wasting it there. And if you do it too late in the evening or at night, you make your lawn susceptible to disease. When you do water, you want to water deeply and frequently. In terms of your lawn, it really depends on your soil composition. As I mentioned, a lot of soil, clay-based soils in this area. So the best way, if you want to get an idea, you can do the tuna can test, or you can actually do a little soil profile where you take a spaded shovel and dig a portion out after you've watered to see how far it goes down. You'd like to see it go down as probably 4 to 6 inches with the roots. If you're not letting it go that deep, you're just training your roots to actually grow very shallow, which then again makes your lawn susceptible to disease as well as other issues. Timers are a great thing to use if you're very busy and you don't have the time. For sprinklers, I would not recommend using oscillating sprinklers, because if it's really windy, you're going to get a lot of water that's thrown off. They're not very effective. I usually like the rotary because they're quiet and they can cover a lot of ground. But if you have an irrigation system, make sure that it's not wasting any of the water. And then watering by yourself, you can do it if you have a very small patch of turf. Don't recommend it just because the amount of time it takes you to actually get that amount of water it needs. Will be about 3 hours, and I know a lot of us have other things to do besides standing and watering the lawn. If you do have an issue with soil getting the water through, you might need a wetting agent. Typically, we recommend that for new lawns and new renovations, but not after it's been established, not to use it anymore. And then gray water can be used on lawns. It's fine, but do not use it in any areas that have edible landscaping involved with any type of edibles. So that you can use it though in your lawn if you have that. Aeration and overseeding should be done at least once a year, every year. Done in the fall. The reason being is you have everything that will then come back strong in the spring. If you do in the spring, the issue is you run the risk of, with the summer heat that we get here, as well as the foot traffic that accompanies that, for not really getting a lot of the seedlings to take off. But if you can afford it, we do recommend doing it twice a year, because again, you're just sowing new grass seeds, which then makes your turf stronger and denser and thicker. Right around, if you do it in the spring, if any of you decide to do it this upcoming spring, you want to do it when the forsythia is blooming, and that's because typically that's when crabgrass seeds have spread, And by putting seeding out when you're aerating, it actually will compete with the crabgrass seeds and acts like a weed control. So basically, you can kill two birds with one stone. And if you wait any longer after, I mean, you can still do that, but I really recommend the forsythia. And for those that are not familiar with forsythia, it's that yellow plant that is pretty noticeable in yards that have it. Do not buy spike shoes. They do not work. They're not going to give you the proper aeration that you need. You need a core aerator that has the tines on it that's going to plug holes, multiple holes into the turf. Either have a contractor do it, which I recommend because aerators are a pain to use. But if you do prefer to do it on your own, you can always go rent an aerator from Home Depot or some local rentals store. I know there's Rentals Unlimited throughout Montgomery County. Okay, so I mentioned biochar and compost. One of the great things about those, and it's a new technique that's being introduced into lawn care, natural organic lawn care, is top dressing. And so again, this is a great thing to do when you aerate and overseed as well, because you're going to provide nutrition for those seeds. It also can help crowd out and cover up any of those weed seeds. It adds organic matter to the soil. Again, as I said earlier, not all compost is created equal. So if it's you or your contractor doing it, make sure you know what source of compost they're using. And both overall will increase the water holding capacity. The top picture is a biochar. The bottom picture is an example of a compost top dressing where they spread it. That's about what it would look like to put a 1/4 inch down on your lawn. And then the third picture is an actual top dresser. And as I mentioned, we use it's a biochar compost mix, and the compost portion of that is compliant with the Maryland fertilizer law. So it's a 50% mix, so you actually get the benefits of the biochar as well as the compost with the organic matter and the fertilizer. So here's the leaf mulching I was discussing before. So you can see decent amount of leaf falls. If it's much thicker than that, that's when you want to look to actually remove most of it, because afterwards it should look similar to what it is on the right. In terms of leaves, you'll have a little kind of big ones you see. You can leave them there. That's not really going to be that much of an issue. But in terms of effectiveness, usually, like I said, you rake them in lines, and then the contractor yourself would just take your mower and you just go back and forth over and over again and shred it up. And it goes very quickly. Like I said, it's much more cost effective than leaf removal. And when you're doing a natural organic lawn care program, it's another free source of fertilizer, and it's really good for the lawn and the soil. So that's the residential portion in terms of different techniques, different approach, different expectations. I don't know if we have any people that live in HOAs or COAs or any commercial properties, but it's a little bit different. With a residential home, you typically have 2 decision makers, either you or your spouse. But with a commercial setting, it's a lot different. And from what we've learned from working with our commercial clients, is same thing. You have to set expectations, because you have a lot of stakeholders in your community that have different expectations in terms of what's important in terms of the aesthetics or the organics and protecting kids, children, their pets. So make sure you set those forward first. You can set priority areas if you have common areas. Experiment with different areas. If you have high profile areas that you really need to look aesthetically pleasing. I know communities we've worked with in the past, they had a scale set up where it was A, B, C in terms of aesthetic importance, and 1, 2, 3 in terms of organic importance. They eventually just worked it down to A and B and 1, 2, 3. So A1 areas received the best organic protocols, and where a lot of their money went, these were high visible areas with also high amounts of foot traffic for kids and pets. But then they had other areas such as median strips where they continued doing conventional lawn care because they didn't have any of those issues surrounding it. So that was something they mapped out, and that took them about, I think, 2 years to do. And they ended up setting up a separate committee for that. But with that committee, you actually have to educate your board and property managers because it is a difference in budget. They're going to see natural organic lawn care costs, and like I mentioned, it can be as much as 25% more in the first year. And to them, when you're working on your budget, that can be something that constrains it. But however, as I mentioned earlier, with natural organic lawn care, that cost actually comes down if you look at it over a 5-year. And a lot of people have 30-year mortgages, and if you actually start with a natural organic program, you'll have it saving you money by the 5th year. Not only to mention you'll have the aesthetics that come with it, and also the safety if you have any kids, pets, or just any other people such as yourself that want to play on it. But you do need to educate your board and property manager. A lot of contractors are just starting to get knowledge and familiarize themselves with these new techniques, products. Your board and property manager are no different. They need to be educated. You need to show them the benefits. You need to tell them what's the difference. Have them come to events like this. Have them, look at different things online. Set up a separate committee. So again, one of the properties we worked with, they had a landscaping committee, which would then report to the board, but they set up a turf committee that dealt primarily with the organic protocol. There's a pro and con to that. The great thing is it gave them more focus. The bad thing is they actually wanted to only deal with one contractor, so we were dealing with the lawn and they had somebody else dealing with the other landscaping, and it just made too much logistical and communication issues for them with their property manager, so they looked to consolidate that. So it might be something you would set up a separate committee for, or you would just keep it something in your landscaping committee as a topic to talk about, and then after you do that, you want to make sure you communicate it with your community. So even same thing in your residential homes, you want to let people know what you're doing, because anyone that sees you just applying a product, they don't see the bag, so they don't know what you're doing, and a lot of people just assume that it might be a non-organic product. And we've had experience with our applicators where they're out doing an application with a natural organic product, and there's actually a playground nearby, and the parents and kids give the applicators disgusting looks and start leaving. And then it's not until we can finally catch up to them as we're doing the application that we tell them, no, this is a safe product, here's the product label, and they read it, they're like, oh, I didn't know, I just assumed when you were spraying the product that it was a chemical product. And that was because the community did not do a great job of communicating with their stakeholders and people in the community. So I recommend putting signage up, whether it would be in your yard, if you are a commercial property here, doing something to label the areas that you're doing in an organic way, because it is tough to visually see that, because all we see is the actual turf, and we're judging it on its quality. We may not know everything that's been going into it, and if, again, you help continue that education process, people will understand. The final thing is make sure you update your RFP. So a lot of contracts, whether it's with your residential accounts or if it's a commercial account, you'll have certain language written in there. You want to make sure that that commercial RFP reflects the new protocols. We have a draft of a protocols that we can share with people if you live in an HOA and that you want to get your board to use. But it changes in terms of, like I said, the frequency with mowing, the applications that are done, what products should be used, expectations, etc. You want to make sure you get that into the new RFP. So finally, I just want to conclude with saying what no lawn care is not. A lot of companies out there talk about hybrid products or programs. They talk about transitional products. I know I said transitional earlier. Like I said, that's a transitional period, but that is using only natural organic products. Transitional products, bridge products, those are not organic. They're typically labeled organic-based. And organic-based simply means that they combined it with some or an inorganic compound, maybe such as sludge or any other type of biosolid, and then they have another organic component to it, but it's not 100% organic. It's just being marketed or as organic-based. So when you have companies advertising that, or if you see a product in Home Depot or the store, it's not a natural organic product. There's also been reports, I know with Bill 5214 from Montgomery County, that when you do natural organic protocols, that you're going to have an extreme amount of weed infestation, that your yard's basically going to go to crap. And that's not true either. As I have the picture right here, you can have a beautiful lawn with barely any weeds in it. And the cost, while it may be high at first, in the first couple of years, it actually goes down significantly, as opposed to a chemical program where it's incrementally going up in price. And again, as I said, as you repeat that vicious cycle, you're just depleting the soil, as opposed to if you just have a sustainable foundation that the grass can grow in, and then you just have a minimum amount of inputs and techniques that you have to use. And it's definitely not ugly. I think this is a beautiful lawn, but again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, so everyone has their own opinion. And one thing I did forget to put on here, and it's the last thing I'll say, is with no lawn care, it is safe. You can use it. You can go on immediately after you do an application. You can use these products and not have to worry about having any adverse health effects. And same thing if you have any kids, pets, it's not going to be dangerous. So just realize natural organic lawn care does take time. There is some differences, but overall you can get the same great results as what you've had before. It's just tweaking the way we've done things in the past, and that's all I have.
We request everybody to sign in, because if Anybody came late, please do sign in. We get a free soil test. Anybody who came here will get a free soil test. So please sign in. And if you have questions, please come to the mic because it's being recorded and televised. So we'll do the question and answer session.
Thank you very much. How much does what you say apply to working with gardens as opposed to your grass?
So gardens under the pests, I know from Montgomery County, they're exempt. Are they exempt for Takoma parks too? Yeah, so they're exempt from Takoma parks. In terms of the products, you can use them in gardening. Like I said, they're meant for farming. Was there a particular product you were referring to, or? Yeah, I mean, they're sustainable gardening. Like some of the things we look at is, doing like naturescaping, incorporating native plants, plants that bring bees back. There's things that you can do for that. And then, of course, with invasives, some of them can't be controlled by the natural organic products. And I know that those under the Montgomery County bill are exempt because, again, those crawls create environmental issues. But for the most part, everything I was discussing today can work in your garden. You can put compost. You can put compost, so the compost portion actually, so that you can put compost in your garden beds. That's the law, the fertilizer law I'm talking about. Same thing like the mosquito question that came up earlier, does not apply to your mulch beds. It only applies to the lawns. So you can put biochar, like I said, Bartlett trees, they put biochar in trees. You can put compost. I know we're doing a couple applications this spring for customers instead of mulch. And so you could do that. That'd be a difference.
I bought a bag of corn gluten-based fertilizer. Any comments on that?
So corn gluten actually violates that fertilizer law I was discussing, and it's not super effective because the timing of it, when you put it out, it's kind of timed with that forsythia bloom, but it's not a very effective, I would say, control. It's, the 900 fertilizer, so you get that benefit, but in terms of weed control, it doesn't work. I would recommend doing using one of these other products.
What do I do with what I have?
Yeah, I would return it if you haven't used it. If not, I mean, it's not an environmental hazard to keep it stored. And if you have a friend or family member that lives outside of Maryland, you can always donate it to them. Yeah, you can take it there.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. You talked about the transition period between kind of a chemically fertilized lawn and natural, but what about for those of us who've just had kind of a laissez-faire approach to our lawn where, we're basically just going from a group of weeds and crabgrass? How long do you think it would take to see real progress with that?
You still can have that 2 to 3 year mark, but again, if you have I know exactly what you're talking about because we have clients, same thing. It's nothing but weeds present in the lawn, maybe a couple patches of grass. That's where you have a high amount of inputs, so you'd actually be having to put so much more, like in terms of applications with compost, biochar, fertilizer. That's when you want to aerate, overseed twice a year at a minimum for probably a period of 2 to 3 years because you're playing catch up. And then once you get that soil composition changed, and you start having dense turf growing and crowd out that weeds, again, 2 to 3 years you can still hit it, but you're going to be paying a little bit more.
Thanks also for this presentation. It was really interesting and raises a lot of questions, just I imagine with others too, thinking how to apply these concepts to our own lawns. One of the questions I want to ask about is the idea of de-lawning and trying to minimize how much lawn you have, and also some ideas for replacing actual grass with something else that could, in my case, stand up to a 6-year-old and a dog. I've read things about things like thyme or other like herbs that actually, or other kind of ground cover that can hold up to that kind of foot traffic. So if you could talk about that, and if that's something that you also do.
Yeah, so we categorize that under, we have a myriad of services that different terms probably haven't been used before in the landscape industry, so that would be like agriscaping, incorporating edible plants in the landscape. Before answering more of that, I would say it really depends on what you're trying to get out of it, because sometimes a lawn is necessary if you have kids and you want to play sports on it, but also, like you just mentioned, a lawn isn't necessary. So if you're at a point in your life where you don't have kids, you don't have maybe grandkids coming over, there's no need really to have the lawn because you're paying for all that maintenance and for something that doesn't need to be done. So there's agroscaping, there's beescaping, there's naturescaping. There's a lot of different types of scaping you can do to bring in plants like you discussed, or different ground covers. But that is something that we do, and that you'd have to work with one of our designers on to make sure for your actual property, you're incorporating the right thing, because you may have a different amount of sunlight, different traffic, different areas, just like everyone in this room may have everyone has a different property. So it's on a per property basis, but I mean, that's something we can discuss offline if you'd like.
Do you have any recommendations for getting rid of lesser celandine, or is it possible?
Yeah, it's a pretty tough one.
It is.
Yeah, I don't really have any recommendations off the top of my head. Alan?
Alan Cohen, Biological Pest Management. I've used on my own lawn, and I can't suggest it because it's an off-label use, but 10% solution of boric acid sprayed on lesser celandine will kill it. Boron is an essential nutrient, but if you use more of it than a plant needs, it'll kill the plant. So that can be used to kill lesser celandine, but not, you can't use it commercially because it's not labeled for that. It's not labeled as an herbicide, but it has herbicidal effects. So on your own property, you can do that, but you can't commercially.
As a licensed professional.
Right.
Is it harmful? I mean, my neighbor complained about mine, but I thought it was beautiful and it smells so nice. I didn't want to remove it.
Again, case by case situation. I mean, what's great to you, so yeah. Exactly. It's really in the eye of the beholder. So, I mean, it's just, again, changing expectations and getting people to shift that way. But that takes time, as we know it.
But is it harming any of the other plants the way that sometimes, poison or ivy can wrap around trees?
No, it's usually just harming the homeowner in terms of the site. That too, but usually, like I said, it's the homeowner that's having the issue with it. Any other questions? Well, thank you for having me tonight. Again, if there's any questions you want to just come and ask afterwards that aren't recorded, feel free to do so. And I appreciate you having me out here.
Thanks, Zach. So, I mean...